All right, guys, I am now ready to say, on the heels of the confirmation of Donald Trump's nominee to the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, that Joe Biden and Democrats, if given the opportunity, must expand the Supreme Court. Of course, this depends on taking the White House, taking the Senate, keeping control of the House of Representatives. I'm going to be calling it expanding the court rather than packing the court. When you say packing the court, you're already ceding some ground to the right and making it sound like something outrageous or radical or aggressive when it's not. I've made it very clear that on moral questions, the left must not stoop down to where the right is when it comes to dishonesty and authoritarianism and the perversion of justice. But when it comes to using the systems we have to legally fight against double standards and hypocrisy and absurdity, we actually have a responsibility to do it. So let's go through and talk about it piece by piece. There are some on the right who say adding justices to the Supreme Court would be a crazy, unprecedented, authoritarian, undemocratic thing for a hypothetical President Joe Biden to do. This is completely untrue. John Adams reduced the size of the court from 6 to 5. Thomas Jefferson went back from 5 to 6 and subsequently up to 7. Under Andrew Jackson, the court went from 7 to 9 justices. So the idea that it's not something that has been done is wrong. Now, there are some even on the left who oppose expanding the Supreme Court because of the slippery slope possibility that if Joe Biden expands the court, the next Republican faced with a minority on their side on the court will then expand the court again. And then the next Democrat expands the court again, and on and on and on. First of all, this is silly at its face, because at a certain point, how big is the court going to get? 97 justices, 131 justices? It's not going to happen, okay? Because the public wouldn't actually stand for it. And I'm going to get back to that momentarily. But importantly, expanding the court is not actually that easy. If you have the same party controlling the White House, the Senate, and the House, which we could have from 2021 to 2023, if Democrats take the White House and the Senate, expanding the court is not that different from passing an appropriations bill. But there are two reasons why it's unlikely that we would go in this slippery slope direction of indefinite expansion of the Supreme Court. And the first is, it's not actually that common that the same party controls the White House, the House, and the Senate at a time when the public would be okay with an expansion of the court. Barack Obama had the White House, House, and Senate for 2 out of his 8 years. And it's very common that at least one of those 3 is controlled by an opposing party. But maybe more importantly, there are many political circumstances that don't lend themselves to public approval of expanding the court. And if the circumstances don't lend themselves to expanding the court, and a Republican or Democratic controlled House, Senate, and White House decides to do it when the public isn't in the mode that they believe it is appropriate, they will be punished electorally. If Donald Trump is defeated and Democrats take the Senate and we retain control of the House, it will be one of those times where the public will be okay with expanding the court. Because the public knows the absurdity of the last 4 years. The public knows the ridiculous double standard of Republicans saying no Merrick Garland during the last year of Barack Obama's term. But yes, Amy Coney Barrett in the last week of Donald Trump's term. The urgent need to right that wrong, I believe, will give us a population from 2021 to 2023 that would be okay with an expansion of the court if indeed Democrats take the Senate and the White House. So not only is there nothing unconstitutional about expanding the court, not only is there nothing unprecedented about expanding the court, not only is there nothing set in stone that one expansion will inevitably lead to every future president expanding the court, but if Joe Biden wins the White House and Democrats take the Senate, we will have a unique 2-year period during which the country will understand that to get back on a more correct path, we must take less common actions. And one of those actions is expanding the court to get it back from these outrageous lunatics that Donald Trump has put on the court. And for those saying that while it may not be unconstitutional and it may not be undemocratic, the reality is it is actually democratic. Republicans have nominated. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. For those saying it might not be unconstitutional, but it is undemocratic, understand that Republicans have nominated 15 of the last 19 justices, despite having lost the popular vote in 6 of the last 7 presidential elections. That doesn't sound democratic to me. If you disagree with me, let me know. I want to hear from you. You may not have known this, but when you see me sitting here on the show, I am often wearing shirts by a company called Teddy Stratford. I asked them to be a sponsor because they are by far my favorite shirts that I own. With almost all other slim fit button-up shirts I've worn, you get this annoying stretched out gap in the chest where the buttons are, which does not look good. But what makes Teddy Stratford shirts unique is this patented zipper that's hidden underneath the buttons, which actually prevents the chest from looking weird and stretched out like that. It looks really good. And just all around, they cut the entire shirt in a specific way that makes your upper body look a lot better. It's just a much nicer and more stylish fit than you get from other shirts. And they hand make everything with 100% Egyptian cotton and flat felled seams, which means it's going to be a lot more durable than other shirts and last a lot longer, which I really love. Go check them out at davidpakman.com/Teddy. The link is down below and they'll give you 15% off your first order if you use the coupon code Pakman at checkout.